Aid agencies in Gaza are picking up efforts to help Palestinians struggling within the war-torn Strip. Now, CNA's Jack Board caught up with the Director General of the International Committee of the Red Cross at the COP28 talks in Dubai to discuss the growing humanitarian crisis there.
Fighting has resumed after a brief pause. How important was that truce to get humanitarian assistance to the vulnerable communities in Gaza?
Well, this truce was absolutely critical, first and foremost for the civilians in Gaza and also to a certain extent in Israel, because it gave a respite to the civilian population. In the Gaza Strip, the humanitarian situation was nothing short of catastrophic. Entire neighborhoods leveled, more than 1 million people displaced, scores of people killed, wounded. I mean, our colleagues working in hospitals gave us heartbreaking testimonies and terrifying stories about massive influx of severely injured civilians, women, men, children. Those were really heartbreaking testimonies, and the reality was that hospitals could simply not cope with the mass load of with the caseload of casualties. So this truce allowed first civilians to breathe. It allowed humanitarians to get more humanitarian aid in. It allowed also civilians to get access to food in bakeries, in markets, and also the fuel allowed the water treatment plants to operate and to pump more water in what remains in the piping systems of the southern part of the Gaza Strip.
What are your teams telling you now about the situation following that small period of truce and the ability of the communities there to withstand another round of hostilities?
Well, actually, I mean, if you just picture people in Gaza who have been living a nightmare of 50 days, now with the fighting resuming, it's back to a nightmarish situation where nowhere safe exists in the Gaza Strip for people to flee to. Families are in harm's way. There is challenges to get food, medicines, and hospitals are still in the very state of at the brink of collapse as at the beginning of the truce. Humanitarian aid will be likely to trickle down rather than flow in, and this will be a massive challenge in humanitarian terms for the civilian population.
The ICRC has been involved in helping to transport some of the freed Hamas hostages to safety. How delicate has that situation been for your personnel?
Well, this is really our role of neutral intermediary. The ICRC, as a guardian of international humanitarian law, has established for many years dialogue with the Israeli side and Hamas to ensure that they respect their obligations under IHL. And under this role of a neutral intermediary, we were able to facilitate the transfer of hostages in Gaza to the Israeli authorities and ultimately to the families. And family reunification is the key humanitarian outcome here. And at the same time, our teams were able also to facilitate, in the framework of the same deal or agreement, the release of Palestinian detainees who were reunited with their families. So that was a glimmer of hope. It is simple because it's basically transporting hostages and detainees from one point to the other following a negotiated agreement by the parties, but at the same time it's very complex because every single detail is being negotiated and the situation is fluid, so you have challenges at every step of the way when you carry out this very highly sensitive operation. So we are very reassured that things happened more or less according to plan, and families were reunited, and that is the most important thing for us.
Finally a powerful emotional moment at the end of the hardship. What needs to happen next from your perspective?
I mean, for us, what needs to happen next is really the conditions for a dignified life for Israelis and Palestinians, and this will start with first and foremost parties to the conflict respecting their obligations under the Geneva Conventions. They need to take every precautions to protect civilians. They need to ensure and to facilitate humanitarian deliveries and support the work of humanitarian actors with or without ceasefire, with or without truce, with or without humanitarian corridor. These are the obligations of parties, and the onus should always go on parties to the conflict. Humanitarians will always try to move the limits of the possible and push them further, but they can only do so much when you have when cities are turning into rubble and fighting is raging.